Hello, welcome back to my channel. I'm going to talk about the, I believe, 10 books. I'll count while I'm doing this video and you'll tell me if I counted right or wrong that I read in the month of May 2026. I'm going to talk about them mostly in order of least favorite to most favorite, but disclaimer up front, I am still trying to figure out exactly my thoughts on some of these books. So this is where they place, in the short term. Is this where they're going to place in the long term? Probably not. I would expect some of these placements to change, but for now, this is what I've got. Okay. So in last place, my least favorite, I think the one that was the worst, I gave this a 2. I think I gave this like a 2.5, and honestly, that might have been a little generous, is Absolute Wonder Woman Volume 1, The Last Amazon by Kelly Thompson. This is a graphic novel. I do not read a lot of graphic novels, and I want to say that right up front because they're just not my thing. And I think reading this proved to me why they're not my thing. So I don't have a lot of practice with reading graphic novels and then trying to understand what's going on the page with the art and stuff. So half of the struggle with this book was I just did not enjoy the experience reading this thing. I was kind of under the impression that reading graphic novels would be easier than an actual novel. And let's be completely honest, they are, but they are so exhausting to read. And then when we get to the actual story of this, which it's Wonder Woman, okay? Even if you're like me and you don't have a lot of exposure to Wonder Woman, you know enough about her, okay? She's off being a superhero, saving cities, fighting monsters, fighting aliens, things like that. I don't know. The story is just... It was kind of the stuff that you would expect in a graphic novel superhero story. It was not compelling at all. There was no tension and a lot of annoying cliffhangers. So I guess this volume 1 comprises 7... I don't know if chapters is the right word, but 7 stories, collects Absolute Wonder Woman number 1 through 7. And how these things are set up is, of course, each chapter has to have the villain that she's fighting, and there needs to be stakes. And at the end of the day, especially since we're at the start of this series, she needs to defeat it. And so what would happen is we would get the introduction of a really interesting, creature or villain or whoever she needs to fight, bad situation she needs to get herself out of and save people's lives. And the stakes are so high at the start, oh, this is the most scariest tentacle monster of all time. What it does is it zaps fear out of people so that people actually come rushing to it, and then it kills them. And she defeats that in the first volume, and you're okay, well, how where could we go from here? And then later, the next volume, she's fighting in the underworld in Hades, gladiator pit, and she just defeats all of these things. And then, there's this riddle, and she just conquers it all. It's just so annoying. There's the idea of stakes and tension, but she's not actually going to fail. She doesn't get to fail. And then the next thing that's introduced is supposed to be an even bigger, badder, worse, scarier thing. And it's just an annoying read. So I don't know what I was expecting from this. I don't know if my expectations were too high or whatever. Like I said, comic book graphic novels just might not be for me. I'm sorry to all the graphic novels out there. This one will prevent me from reading any others for a while. Okay. Actually, I think I read 11 books. Actually, I'm looking at my list now. So in 10th place, yeah, it's actually one that I DNF'd, and that is Dear Monica Lewinsky by Julia Langbein. So this is a pretty new release. I think it came out in the past month or two, and it follows our narrator and our main character, Jean Dornan. She's somewhere in her 40s when this book starts, and she is married, and she's not having a really good relationship, and some type of small fight or whatever with her husband kind of sends her spiraling and ends up making her kind of think back to, she did a summer abroad program in the year of 1998, and so this fight with her husband kind of sends her spiraling to thinking back of that summer, which apparently was a summer that was marked by a very inappropriate relationship with her older professor. And the book is called Dear Monica Lewinsky because that was also the summer, I guess, I didn't really get to that part of the book, to be honest, but that was the summer that the Monica Lewinsky kind of scandal with Bill Clinton came about. And Jean is realizing that she was very critical and mocking and said very terrible things about Monica Lewinsky, only to now kind of understand that she was in a similar situation where she was, the young woman who was in a inappropriate relationship with an older male authority figure, right? And so she kind of is re-examining the summer with this kind of fictionalized saintly figure of Monica Lewinsky with her to kind of evaluate the situation in a new way for the first time. And I made it about 46 of the way through this book. It was not bad. but it really did nothing to capture my attention. I really hope this book finds an audience for the people who need it, for people who have gone through something like this and kind of need a reflection of their experiences. And of course, I'm very sorry if, you can really relate to Jean, or I guess Monica Lewinsky's experience. But I hadn't yet gotten to the meat of the relationship central to this story. And like I said, I got almost 50% of the way through. Her and the professor had probably had like 4 or 5 scenes max, and none of them felt inappropriate. And granted, like that's a lot of times how it starts, right? Grooming doesn't just, he's not just going to come onto her right out of the way, right? There's a buildup to it. But 50% of the way through the book, and it's a short book. It's maybe just around 300 pages, maybe less, maybe a little bit more. And I'm still waiting for the inappropriateness to begin. I'm so like, I needed some type of hint to like keep me engaged in this. And there was just nothing else that kept me around. I found the main character's voice in the present very juvenile, which again is a little strange because she's like 40 years old at this point. And like, you know what? I will probably have juvenile, I'm going to be honest, I will probably have juvenile humor into my 40s as well, because like, I guess that's just who I am. But like in a book, it was grating and it did not work. The humor overall just did not work for me. And the cast of characters in her past, like during the summer abroad program, I didn't care about them. I don't care about them. And they had a pretty big portion of this book was dedicated to like her friendships with these girls in these programs. And like, I don't care. Can you get to like the meat of the story? So I just didn't want to spend more of my time reading it, so I just gave it up. It wasn't bad, like I said, it just wasn't for me. In 9th place, we have Audition by Katie Kitamura. And so I did make a video on my channel about Angel Down by Daniel Kraus, which, spoiler alert, will appear on this list much higher up. In that, I mentioned how like I felt like the choice of Angel Down winning the Pulitzer Prize and Stag Dance by Tori Peters being a finalist, it felt very exciting because neither of those two books felt like conventional, quote unquote, like Oscar bait, I guess in this case, like Pulitzer bait, kind of lit fic books. And because I had liked both of Stag Dance and Angel Down, it inspired me to read Audition because it made me think like maybe this book would be just as interesting and unique and I would really like it. And as you can guess, by the way, it's down here, I didn't end up really liking it. I cannot say this book is bad, but this to me is the prize bait book, okay? I find nothing unique, interesting, or notable about this book whatsoever. I am so incredibly glad it did not win the Pulitzer because I'm sorry, the Pulitzer could not beat the allegations on this one. And I know Audition was like a finalist, I think, or on the shortlist for like the Booker Prize. I don't get it. I don't get what they're seeing. I'm sorry, this might be a little bit of my thing. Like, I'm very much over the kind of meta conversation about like artists in books. It's something that, books really struggle with, is like either having like a writer or a director, or in this case, an actress, the center of their books. And then like the book is a meta commentary on art in general, or they view everything through some kind of artist lens. And so in Audition, it is kind of viewed through, the art of acting and the idea that we're all playing, parts on a stage, having masks and like never really being true and authentic and, living within these kind of confines. Yeah, it's pretty much a Shakespeare quote, and I just didn't find it interesting. Like the most interesting thing here is, I guess, like, what is family? How can you create your own family? Kind of like this found family thing. But like, I struggle with these, like, I'm a middle-aged woman with a perfectly fine but boring husband who I don't like, and I'm gonna have a midlife psychosis event. Like, I don't care. I'm sorry. I've read this too many times. Do I think she wrote this book like trying to bait a book prize? No, but I find these are the types of books that like book prizes like for some reason, and I don't get it. So it was fine. Like, the writing was good. I saw the twist coming. I can't say I didn't enjoy anything about the book. Like, there was probably about a solid like 25% of this book that I really did like. But after that, or around that, I was just kind of like, can we just move on? And I'm happy that it was short, at least. So yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't love it. I didn't hate it. I think I'm just north of disliking it. It was... Okay, in 8th place, we have Seascraper by Benjamin Wood. This is another book that has had a pretty big conversation the past year or so because it was a finalist, or not a finalist, it was on the long list for the Booker Prize. And I'd heard really good things about this one. I loved about 1/3 of this book, though it was not a continuous third. I think I loved like 10%, and then I was like, okay, about like, 20%, and then I loved like 15%, and then I was like, about the rest, right? It took the first 15% or so of this book to really capture me, but it really had me loving the middle bit, and then it really fell apart for me about halfway through the night low tide chapter through the end of the book. So this book is split into 3 parts. It starts with like the first low tide event, which is the morning low tide, and then the second low tide event or time, which is the low tide event that happens that same day later that night, and then the low tide event in the next morning. So it takes place over the course of like 24 to 36 hours. Our main character Thomas, who is a shinker, so he like collects shrimp pretty much, and he does it like the old-fashioned way with like a horse and a cart and a buggy. But anyway, Thomas is a young boy. I think he's just about 17 or 18, and he lives just alone with his mom on this like little sea shack, and he's starting to really get tired of this life. He really wants to find his own way in life. You know, this is just something that he fell into because it's what his grandfather did and his grandfather did, right? It's just like the family business. But, you know, he's a very lonely boy. He has very limited friends, and this shanking business takes up a lot of his time, energy, and they're very poor, so he just kind of wants to get out, and his passion is music. He loves playing the guitar and singing, and he really wishes that he could like make a career out of this. And then this movie producer comes to town and hires Thomas to kind of show him around the beach and to show him his process of, you know, collecting shrimp, because this movie producer is trying to adapt a book, and it takes place like on a very similar kind of English foggy coastal beach. And so he thinks this is the perfect location, and he kind of wants Thomas to act as a scout for him. So like I said, it kind of takes place over the course of 36 hours. And I was left wondering if the author had decided on the structure / length of this book before or after he decided on how to end the story. Because for me, the only real justification on some of the choices he made to end the story like he did, like the only justification I can think for some of his choices goes back to, oh, it's a short book, right? So if it's a short book and you only have, I think it's less than 200 pages, and you only have like 36 hours to pretty much take this character from starting point to having like a satisfying ending that wraps up several plot points and emotional beats, then if you're stuck there and you're like, okay, I only have these 36 hours in this less than 200 page book and these 3 moments, right? The low tide, the high tide, and the low tide to do this, then I need to have this kind of dream sequence here, and I need to do this. So if I take the book's length into consideration, I can understand the necessity of a scene, like I kind of am hinting towards, to wrap up some of the emotional plots and supply some form of closure that is otherwise hard to achieve in such a small kind of runway and a small story set over the course of only 1 night and 2 mornings. But that's my issue. This book does not have to be this short. Like, you will rarely hear me say this. This book needed to be longer. This book needed to be longer. And if it was longer and he could actually like create better character connections and create that emotional change within the character without having to resort to such, in my opinion, kind of slapstick events and cliche choices, then it could have hit much better. If the story took place over a full 2 days, or perhaps like half a week, or if he's really stuck to this like short time frame, then perhaps the incident that happened on the second night was not the best story beat to elicit the character change / emotional impact that the author wanted and really this book demands. And if Thomas and Mr. Hollywood, like the director, had more time together or had a slightly different dynamic, we wouldn't need such a gimmicky scene to kind of reach that emotional catharsis. Yeah, there's like a reveal at the end of this book. I'm a bit lukewarm on the reveal. I'm not saying it doesn't have any thematic relevance or weight. I can see where it could. It's just, like, I think some of these choices, the choice of the reveal and then like the choice right before that about like the event that happens on the second low tide night, it just comes from the book being so short and therefore like having to put enough big moments in the book to still get this character to change. And he needed to give us more time. He needed more time to make this matter. Outside of that, I thought it was very atmospheric. I actually really was drawn into this setting. I could picture it so well. And I really liked our main character, Thomas, or at least I felt sympathetic and related to him. I just think it needed more time. This needed more pages to really cook and do its job properly. And I rarely say a book needs to be longer. Now we're getting into the books that I own physically. So this is going to shock some people. Outrage. I don't know if I've gotten my video on this book up yet, so forgive me. In 7th place, we have Crime and Punishment by Dostoevsky. Now, between like Seascraper and Crime and Punishment is a big jump in both my enjoyment of the book and also how well I think the quality of the book is. And I also want to say that when I'm ranking my books from like my least to my favorite, I'm doing it based on mainly on personal enjoyment. Obviously, how good of a book it is going to greatly impact my personal enjoyment on a book. But just because I rank a book lower doesn't mean, like, I think Audition is a well-written book. That is probably a better written book than some of the books above it. Not necessarily this one, but like some of the books that we haven't talked about yet. But I didn't like it, you know? So like, just because a book has a lot of literary or historical value doesn't mean that I'm gonna love it. Okay, so I say all of that because I did not love this. I did not hate it. I did not dislike it. I liked it. Okay, I liked Crime and Punishment. It was not my favorite thing though. I did really have to force myself to read it. Either I don't know if I'm not the biggest fan of Dostoevsky's writing or I'm not the biggest fan of his writing in the translation. Something about it, and this is only his second work of his that I've read, but I had a somewhat similar lukewarm reaction to White Noise by him, or White Nights by him. White Noise is Don DeLillo. White Nights by him, that where I was like, okay, I liked it, but like I don't have this all-consuming love that I feel like a lot of people have with his works. I liked it, and I am a little bit higher on this book now near the end of the month than I was when I first finished it, which was more like middle of the month. But unfortunately, I don't have that many thoughts on it. It's Crime and Punishment. Don't let me ranking this slightly lower if you're someone who's like, oh, I kind of wanted to read that. Don't let me ranking this slightly lower than perhaps many people think it should be stop you from trying it. I would still very much recommend this book. I think this book works a lot more for a lot of other people. It just wasn't the best thing I've ever read, which is fine. Not every book needs to be the best thing I've ever read. I'm just telling you that because I know a lot of people love this book and I liked it. I'm glad I read it. I liked some of the ideas. I liked some of the characters, but I did feel like you could deeply feel that this book was too long and the pacing was a little bit off. There were brilliant moments though in here of the paranoia and the kind of obsession and the psychosis. I loved that. But yeah, so that is Crime and Punishment. In 6th place, we have Haroon and the Sea of Stories by Salman Rushdie, I believe. So this is actually, I think this technically classifies as like children's literature. And so we follow our main character, Haroon, who is a young boy. Haroon's mother leaves him and his father in a very kind of startling moment at the start of this book, and once that happens, Haroon's father kind of loses his gift of gab, pretty much his ability to tell stories and be captivating and kind of find like enjoyment and fun in life. And so Haroon travels to a fantasy, even more fantasy, because he's already in kind of like a fantasy country. He travels to like a fantasy alternate universe that's mapped on top of ours, where stories kind of live in a giant sea. That ocean of stories, that sea of stories is being poisoned by an evil villain. And so Haroon has to save the fantasy world to also perhaps save his father's ability to tell stories. And so it's a bit of a coming of age and also a very kind of deep, moving father and son relationship, as well as having a lot of kind of metaphor for, storytelling and what makes stories good, their necessity in our lives, and why and how we should protect them. So I believe, let's see, when was this published originally? I think it was originally published in 1991. I read this for the first time in 2026, and I cannot help but read this and think about AI and generative AI and this kind of whole, panic over AI books or generated stories written by AI. Don't get me started on that. But like the kind of poisoning that I mentioned before, and like the sea of stories that kind of twists all the stories that makes them bad or ugly or boring. I'm like, oh my gosh, this is AI. So obviously I don't know, maybe he did project into the future and see this coming. But that is what stood out most to me, and what I found really interesting about the story is kind of it as a commentary on AI and why we need to continue as like readers to fight against normalization of AI in creative spaces, especially in writing. I really liked that. So Haroon and the Sea of Stories. This is the first book I've read by Rushdie. Next, in 5th place, we have Lives of the Saints by Nancy Lehman. I am going to have a whole video on this up on my channel, so I won't talk too much about this, but this follows our main narrator, Louise Brown, who is a young woman who is born and raised in New Orleans, and she goes to college in the Northeast, and now she has returned to New Orleans. And it's about kind of her entanglement with a family that she's known her entire life, the Collier family, particularly the eldest son of the Colliers, whose name is Claude. Claude is a very interesting character that she has a very rose-colored glasses kind of opinion and view on. And through her altered perspective, we are told who he is, but then we actually see his actions or like hear him and we're like, I don't get what she's saying, you know? And so we really just follow the lives of the Collier family through Louise Brown. It's a short book. The most interesting thing about this book is not necessarily that plot, because really there's no plot. It is the rhythmic kind of cadence of this. So go check out my review, because I have more examples of the writing. It really did draw me in, and while it wasn't my favorite thing while I read it, I have thought about this book a lot just because of the rhythmic writing that Lehman deploys in this. Another book that I have a whole video up on my channel on is the Universal Baseball Association Inc. by Robert Coover. So I won't spend too much time on this, but this is in 4th place. Now we're really getting into the books that I really enjoyed. Our main character here is Henry. He's a 56-year-old man who lives a very lonely, isolated life, where he spends all of his time playing a made-up tabletop fantasy baseball game that he made using dice and charts. He has an entire baseball association made up of 8 or 9 teams. All of the players in this team are made up, and he has written like backstories for them all. He has all of their strengths and weaknesses as a baseball player, whether they're rookies, how old they are, if they have any injuries. Like, he has a whole system for this where he can, through dice, kind of determine the outcome of everything in this game, everything in this association. He even has like political parties within this association about who gets to be president of the association, and this is all done just for him. No one else plays this game with him, and it becomes like an obsession. And then something happens, something terrible happens in one of the games, and even though he had the power to stop it, right, he could have just said, I'm going to ignore what this dice are telling me is the outcome of this event and choose a better event that will not send me spiraling. Because obeying the outcomes of the dice and what those rolls of dice represent, because that is the only thing that gives this game structure and meaning, he is seemingly in his mind forced to obey these dice, and it sends him spiraling so that the realities between himself and his life and this game that he has made up completely dissolve. So that there are times when you're reading this book, you have no idea if this is something that Henry himself is saying out loud in real life, or if this is something that he is imagining the players speaking. And it is really fascinating. For me, the 3 key words in this book are sex, baseball, and God. Maybe not necessarily in that order, so go check out my video on this book if you want more information. But I really enjoyed it, even when it was frustrating to kind of figure out what was going on and what was reality, but that was definitely the point. The Universal Baseball Association by Robert Coover. All right, I am back. I think my hair looks even worse than it did before somehow, but I had to take a break. It's now several days later, and I'm here to finish up the final 3 books that I read in May, and we're gonna go rapid fire because I think this video is already way too long. So in 3rd place, my 3rd favorite book that I read in May, and this is, I think, really where we start to get into the books that I really loved. So in 3rd place, we have Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay by Elena Ferrante. It's in 3rd place, and it is fittingly the 3rd book in the Neapolitan Quartet. I already have 2 videos on this quartet from the first 2 books. This is my least favorite of the series so far. My ranking would go the 2nd, the 1st, and then the 3rd, but the same fantastic and immersive language from the first 2 that you come to expect. I think I didn't love this one as much because our 2 main kind of characters in this, Leela and Elena, were separated for most of it, and also Elena's pissing me off with some of her choices. Like, I support a woman's wrongs, but I do not support a woman's stupidity. And sometimes she was borderline stupid on some of these parts. And I was just like, make better choices, please, please. But Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay, I am excited to finish this with the 4th book. I cannot recommend this series enough, especially if you want to read contemporary fiction that reads as if it is already a classic. I think it's helped a little bit by being historical fiction because it's set in like the 1950s-ish in Italy. Incredible series, incredible emotions, and characters and interiority given in this. So yes, that is Those Who Leave and Those Who Stay. So now for top 2, honestly, as I said at the beginning, I haven't really decided with certainty on like the positioning of these. I think either 1 or 2 could be in 1st place or 2nd place, but for now I have Angel Down by Daniel Kraus in my 2nd place option. Again, I have a whole video on this one. I think it's like 20 minutes long. And I mentioned it a little bit before where I kind of talk about the Pulitzer Prize in general for 2026. This takes place in World War I. We're following an American troop, I guess, for lack of a better term, in World War I. Specifically, our main character is someone who avoids as much as possible the actual war and fighting parts. He prefers to be a gravedigger and, like, you know, cover up the bodies of all of his fallen men, until one day he is forced out into the no man's land between the American trenches and the German trenches, because there is an assumed soldier trapped in the no man's land screaming in pain with his like death wails. Our main character is ordered to take care of that soldier, put him out of his misery. But when he arrives, he finds that actually that soldier is an angel. And this kicks off pretty much the entire plot, as many people struggle to take power of this angel and what it represents. That is the premise, but I think there's a lot more about this book. Like I said, I don't want to spend too much time on this because I have a whole video on it. I really enjoyed it. Obviously, it was my second favorite book of the month. It felt fresh and new. There was a lot of vulgarity and gore in this that I'm not really used to. So for me, that was kind of like exciting, and exciting, not that it was there, but exciting that it worked for me. I will say, I think this book is very, very transparent with its messaging, its themes, and really trying to manipulate you emotionally. And while most of the time that does not work for me, something about the execution of this, the writing style used, and I think just the messaging really hit me, and I really enjoyed it. So yeah, that is Angel Down by Daniel Kraus, which means in first place we have Hard Rain Falling by Dawn Carpenter. This is actually the third NYRB I read this month. I didn't necessarily mean to read 3 NYRBs. I just have a lot of unread NYRBs, and I will continue to have them because I continue to buy them on sale. I do it to myself. But this tells the story of our main character, Jack, who is an orphan in the 1940s or so in Portland, Oregon. And he is kind of a teenage punk. He really has no care for society's rules because he feels like society has no care for him. He had a very terrible upbringing and fell into a crowd and turned to crime. And so this book follows Jack and some of the people from, this crowd, most particularly a black runaway kid named Billy is probably the second most important character in this book, especially with Jack's experience and journey in this story. And it really is just a deconstruction or a critique on the American justice system, if that even exists. As Jack tries to live in this America that doesn't have a lot of protection or care for him, he builds up a lot of resentment, and this kind of expresses itself in reckless behavior and antisocial behavior and doing some crime. That lands him in prison. Okay, if I do not yet, I probably will maybe put up a video of me talking about Crime and Punishment and Hard Rain Falling, kind of a comparison to each other because I read them back to back. And obviously one of them is ranked first, and I think the other one is ranked like 7th, which perhaps is controversial. Subscribe to my channel because I will probably get that video up if it's not already up when this wrap up is posted. But yeah, I really liked Hard Rain Falling. For me, it wasn't like one of the best books I've ever read. It might make it onto my 2026 favorite reads of the year. So we'll see about that. But I really did enjoy it. And it has some amazing, beautiful writing and prose that really captured my attention. And similar to Angel Down, I think it really captured something important and true and vital to the American experience that I think needed to be kind of presented and talked about in fiction. So that is Hard Rain Falling by Dawn Carpenter. And that means that I'm finally done talking about all of the books I read in May. I'm already like 5 or 6 days into June as I'm finally filming this wrap up, and I've already finished Dune, and I'm soon to finish, probably in the next day or two, a book about the 30 Years' War, a history book on the 30 Years' War, which for me, very, very odd. So that's what I've got going on right now that I'm reading, and some videos, I guess, that you can look forward to in the future from me. So yeah, thank you all so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. I hope you all are staying safe, sane, and healthy, and that you have a good day. Bye.